A new beginning. Omar adjusted his new security guard uniform, the dark blue fabric still stiff against his skin. He felt out of place, a stark contrast to the quiet serenity of St. Michael's Church. He walked through the heavy oak doors and into the foyer, the scent of old wood and beeswax filling his senses. Pastor Evans, a man with kind eyes and a warm smile, greeted him. "Omar, welcome. I'm David. So glad to have you with us." He extended a hand, and Omar shook it firmly. "Thank you, Pastor Evans," Omar replied, his voice a low rumble. "Please, call me David. Come, let me show you around." The church was empty save for the two of them. Sunlight streamed through the stained glass windows, casting vibrant colors across the polished wooden pews. Omar paused, looking up at the depiction of a saint, his eyes following the intricate details. He'd never been much for churches, but the artistry here was captivating. "Beautiful, isn't it?" David said softly, noticing Omar's gaze. "Yes," Omar admitted, his voice barely a whisper. As they completed the tour, a woman with a bright smile and a Tupperware container approached them. "Pastor, I brought you some dates." "And, Omar, welcome. I'm Martha. Would you like some coffee and dates? I make a mean Arabic coffee." Omar hesitated, then nodded. "Thank you, Martha. That is very kind." He felt a flicker of warmth, a small ember of hope that maybe, just maybe, he could find his place here. He accepted the proffered coffee, the aroma familiar and comforting, and took a date, the sweetness a pleasant surprise. He could sense that this new job was more than just about security. Sweet dates and colorful pictures. The dates arrived each morning with the sunrise, plump and glistening, nestled in a small, woven basket alongside a thermos of strong, dark coffee. Mrs. Gable, with her perpetually rosy cheeks and a voice like warm honey, was usually the deliverer. "Just a little something to start your day, Omar," she'd say, her smile genuine. He'd nod, a silent thank you, his gaze never quite meeting hers directly, but a subtle softening around his eyes betraying his gratitude. The church itself was slowly revealing its secrets. No longer just a place of work, it was becoming a canvas of stories. The stained glass windows, previously just washes of color in the afternoon sun, now held discernible figures. A shepherd, his face etched with compassion, cradling a lamb. A woman, kneeling in prayer, her face illuminated by an unseen light. He found himself lingering during his rounds, his flashlight beam tracing the lines of the paintings that adorned the walls. There was a battle scene, full of swirling dust and clashing swords, and another of a calm sea, a lone figure walking on the water. Who were these people? What were their struggles? The questions echoed in the cavernous silence of the church, unanswered, stirring a curiosity that he hadn't felt in years. He wanted to know their stories, to understand the emotions captured in brushstrokes and colored glass. Perhaps, he thought, these stories held the key to understanding the kindness he had been shown, a kindness that felt both foreign and strangely familiar. A curious question. The afternoon sun dripped gold through the stained glass windows, painting the pews in vibrant hues. Omar sat on a bench near the entrance, his gaze fixed on the intricate patterns. Sarah, a whirlwind of energy, bounced over to him, her red hair a fiery halo in the light. "Hi Omar," she chirped, settling beside him, leaving a noticeable gap. "Beautiful, isn't it? The light, I mean." He nodded, a rare smile gracing his lips. "Very peaceful." "So," she began, fiddling with the strap of her satchel, "I was wondering, where are you from originally?" Omar hesitated. This was always the difficult part. "Lebanon," he said quietly. Sarah's eyes widened. "Wow. That's amazing. Tell me about it. Is it very different here?" He described the cedars, the bustling markets, the call to prayer echoing through the valleys. As he spoke, Sarah listened intently, her face an open book of curiosity. "And your job?" she asked. "Protecting the church? Do you believe in God?" Omar paused, considering his words. "I believe in being a good man," he said finally. "In helping others. In protecting what is right." Sarah nodded thoughtfully. "I believe in God's love," she said. "And that He wants us to love each other, no matter what." A comfortable silence fell between them, broken only by the distant chirping of birds. Omar felt a flicker of something unfamiliar, a warmth that had nothing to do with the sun-drenched windows. Perhaps, he thought, this place held more than just a job for him. The little book. Rain lashed against the stained glass windows of the church, turning the courtyard outside into a blurry, gray wash. Omar stood just inside the doorway, the scent of damp wool clinging to his uniform. He usually enjoyed the rhythmic drumming of rain, but today it felt oppressive. Sarah bustled up to him, a flash of bright yellow in the dim interior. Omar. Perfect timing. I almost forgot. She rummaged in her oversized bag, finally producing a small, worn book. Its cover was a muted blue, the title embossed in faded gold lettering. This is for you, she said, holding it out. It's about Jesus. Omar accepted the book, his thick fingers carefully taking it from her. He examined it silently, turning it over in his hands. The paper felt old, almost brittle. He raised his gaze to meet Sarah's. Thank you, he said, his voice a low rumble. I will read it. He didn't elaborate, but his dark eyes held a flicker of something Sarah couldn't quite decipher. Curiosity. Hesitation. No pressure, of course. Sarah rushed on, a nervous energy bubbling within her. Just thought you might find it interesting. I have to run. Choir practice. See you tomorrow, Omar. She hurried away, leaving Omar alone with the little book. He tucked it carefully into the inside pocket of his jacket, the leather cool against his chest. The rain continued to fall, but now, the sound seemed less like a lament and more like a soft invitation. Whispers in the night. The oil lamp cast dancing shadows across the pages. Omar hunched lower, the book heavy in his calloused hands. The words swam before his eyes, a confusing mix of unfamiliar names and parables. Yet, beneath the confusion, a strange comfort settled in his chest. It was like a distant melody, heard faintly across a crowded marketplace, pulling him towards an unknown source. Sleep came fitfully. That night, his dreams were vivid, filled with a light unlike any he had ever seen. It wasn't the harsh glare of the desert sun, but a soft, warm radiance that emanated from everything around him. A gentle voice, like the rustling of palm leaves in a summer breeze, whispered words he couldn't quite grasp, but felt deep within his soul. He awoke before dawn, the lingering warmth a phantom touch on his skin. The next evening, Omar found himself drawn back to the book. He tried to be discreet, shielding it behind a stack of official reports, but the other guards were not blind. He felt their eyes on him, sharp and curious, as he sat in the corner, his lips moving silently. Whispers followed him as he walked to his post, snippets of conversations he couldn't quite decipher. He caught the eye of Salim, the oldest of the guards, who gave him a knowing, almost pitying, look before turning away. The weight of their scrutiny settled upon him, heavy and suffocating. He closed the book, the light suddenly feeling cold and distant. The break-in. The stained glass windows cast distorted moonlight patterns across the floor. Omar, making his hourly rounds, paused. A faint scraping echoed from within the sanctuary. He held his breath. Silence. He dismissed it as the old building settling, but the hairs on his arms remained stubbornly erect. He continued his rounds, his senses on high alert. He was nearing the heavy oak doors of the sanctuary again when he heard it, a distinct metallic clang, followed by a muffled curse. No settling building made those sounds. Omar gripped the heavy flashlight tighter. This was no stray cat. He pushed the doors open, his beam slicing through the darkness. Two figures, cloaked in shadows, were wrestling with the donation box bolted to the wall. Stop. Omar's voice, usually a low murmur, boomed in the cavernous space. The figures froze, startled. One lunged at Omar, a crowbar glinting in his hand. Omar sidestepped, swinging the flashlight. It connected with a sickening thud, and the attacker stumbled back. The second figure charged, knocking Omar off balance. He landed hard, the air whooshing from his lungs. A sharp pain bloomed in his ribs. He saw stars. Despite the pain, Omar scrambled to his feet. The two figures, rattled but not defeated, abandoned the donation box and fled through a side door, disappearing into the night. Omar, clutching his side, watched them go. He wanted to give chase, but a searing pain shot through him with every breath. He sank to his knees, the cold stone a stark contrast to the burning agony in his ribs. The church was safe, but at what cost? Songs of comfort. Omar lay propped against a mountain of pillows, the floral scent from the bouquet on his bedside table almost overpowering the antiseptic smell clinging to the small room. Sunlight streamed through the window, painting stripes across the worn quilt. He watched dust motes dance in the golden rays, a silent observer in his own life. A gentle knock announced Pastor Evans. "Omar, good to see you're awake. We brought some company." The door swung open, revealing Sarah Miller behind the pastor, her arms laden with a basket overflowing with homemade bread and fruit. Behind her, several other church members peeked in, their faces etched with concern and kindness. "We just wanted to check on you," Sarah chirped, setting the basket on the small table. "And bring a little cheer." Pastor Evans pulled up a chair. "Mind if we sing a few songs? Offer a prayer for your recovery?" Omar, usually reserved, found himself nodding. The quiet strength in their faces, the genuine concern in their eyes, disarmed him. They began to sing, their voices blending in a simple, heartfelt harmony. "Amazing grace, how great thou art." The melodies, unfamiliar yet comforting, filled the room, weaving a tapestry of hope and peace. Omar closed his eyes, letting the music wash over him, a balm to his wounded body and spirit. He didn't understand all the words, but he understood the feeling behind them, a feeling of acceptance, of belonging, of something larger than himself. He felt a warmth spread through him, chasing away the chill that had settled deep in his bones. When they finished, a profound silence filled the room, broken only by Sarah's sniffle. "We're praying for you, Omar," she said, her voice thick with emotion. "We're all praying for you." A new understanding. Omar sat on the edge of his cot, the worn pages of the New Testament falling open in his lap. Sunlight streamed through the small window of his room at the shelter, illuminating dust motes dancing in the air. He wasn't reading the words so much as absorbing them, letting the stories wash over him like a cool desert rain. The parable of the Good Samaritan resonated deeply. It mirrored the kindness he had experienced from the church members, the warm meals, the genuine smiles, the simple offer of a place to belong. He remembered Mrs. Davison's unwavering patience as she explained the scripture, her voice gentle and encouraging. It was the same gentle voice that echoed in his dreams, the voice that had haunted him with its soft call. Before, he dismissed it as a trick of his weary mind, a phantom born of loneliness. Now, a new understanding dawned. It wasn't just a voice, it was an invitation. A shiver traced its way down his spine, a sensation both unsettling and exhilarating. He closed the book, the image of the cross on the cover imprinted on his eyelids. The weight of it, the symbol of sacrifice and love, felt profound. He thought of the mosque he used to attend, the rigid rules and the distant pronouncements of the imam. Here, in this small church, everything felt different. Warmer. Real. He felt a pull, a tug towards something he couldn't quite name, but knew he had to explore. The church wasn't just a place of refuge, it was a beacon. A new path. Sarah arrived with a basket overflowing with homemade bread, a jar of peach preserves, and a worn copy of the New Testament. Omar met her at the door, a hesitant smile gracing his lips. The scent of cinnamon from the bread filled the small apartment as Sarah stepped inside. After they settled at the small kitchen table, Omar cleared his throat, his gaze fixed on the swirling pattern of the tabletop. "Sarah," he began, his voice low, I want to learn more about Jesus." Sarah's eyes widened, a genuine warmth spreading across her face. "Omar, that's wonderful." She reached across the table, her hand gently covering his. "Pastor Evans would be happy to talk with you." The following Sunday, Omar found himself seated in Pastor Evans' study, the afternoon sun casting long shadows across the room. He listened intently as the pastor spoke of faith, forgiveness, and a love that knew no bounds. Omar asked questions, his brow furrowed in concentration, absorbing every word. He spoke of his past, his doubts, his yearning for something more. "It's a journey, Omar," Pastor Evans said, his voice a comforting balm. "A path you walk, one step at a time." That Sunday, Omar stood before the congregation, a quiet strength emanating from him. He spoke simply, honestly, of his desire to follow Jesus. A wave of warmth washed over him as the church erupted in applause, welcoming him into their fold. Faces beamed at him, hands reached out in greeting. He saw in them a new family, a new beginning. The path ahead was uncertain, but for the first time in a long time, Omar felt a sense of peace, a sense of belonging. The weight on his shoulders seemed to lift.